Be careful.
He's and Scott Higgins, both of them coked up out of their minds.
Listen to you. He's down in the basement.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I think we should call this the Acement.
The Acement, yes.
Yeah, what do you think there, huh?
I like that. The Acement Studios.
Excuse me, I'm drinking beer. Don't smell this.
We usually drink bourbon on our end
Yeah,
when we
right.
do the podcast, so
That's all right.
feel free to enjoy yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You shoot an 8-ball if you want. We don't care, as long as it's good stories.
And it didn't go live. All right, start again. Listen, I know how to produce from the Acement. For some reason, it didn't go live right away. All right, that explains a lot. Welcome to Behind the Funny.
No, we're gonna clink to start it off instead.
All right. We'll clink to
clinks.
start it off. All right. So we had a little issue there. Not quite the half hour that went by when Scott forgot to go live a couple of weeks ago. We didn't go live for about 30 seconds. So
Don't
we
try
are
to
live
save.
now.
Don't try to save face.
I'm just saying,
my failure.
it's-
That's all.
At least I figured it out pretty quickly.
Yes, you did. Yes,
I'm
you did,
just
my
saying.
friend.
So
But
go ahead.
welcome
Thank
to-
everyone.
welcome to Behind the Funny, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Now that you can actually see and hear us, but thank you those of you that join us live here on Wednesday nights. If you haven't joined us live, please do. It's a lot of fun. You get to interact with us. You get to chat with us. You get to ask questions. We're live on twitch.tv/drinks, jokes, and storytelling. That's the letter N, storytelling. Or follow us on Facebook at Behind the Funny. Or you can even follow Ace Aceto, Scott Higgins, whatever you like. There's all kinds of ways to follow us.
We're all over the place. We are absolutely all over the place.
Absolutely.
100%.
100%, Ace, 100%.
So,
And to your point, Ace, we clinkied ahead of time.
yes, we did. What are you drinking?
You know, it's kind of funny. I had gotten you for Christmas a little bottle.
Yep.
And I decided to pick up one for myself of Jefferson's Reserve Pritchard Hill Cabernet Cask finish bourbon. It's very good.
It is delicious. I did not take it.
Absolutely good.
I did not take it with me. I am drinking just the regular Jefferson's small batch, very small batch, which is another fantastic choice.
One of our all-time favorites, yes.
Clinkies, buddy.
Clinkies, my friend.
Clinkies. It's been a while since we did actually, I think this is the first time we've done totally remote, where we're both remote, as well as our guests. So
yes,
I'm traveling for work, and so we were able to get a very funny comic who we've talked about a bunch of times on the show. About getting him on, and now we've finally been able to secure him in his busy schedule. So
he is a busy guy.
I'm not being facetious.
No, you look at his Facebook page, you look online, and this guy is always doing shows, working all the time.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a pretty impressive schedule. I got to work with him for the first time a while ago at our buddy Jim McHugh's club up in Portsmouth, McHugh's Comedy Club, and was really impressed. I mean, because besides him, I was the next newest comic at almost 20 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because you had, Joey Carroll, Jim McHugh, Carolyn Plummer was there that night. So you had all these experienced comics, and here's this, younger, newer guy. He walks up there full confidence, and rightfully so, because he just crushed. And then I got to see him again at our friend Kirsten Logan's Galactic Theater show that she does there. He closed out the night and was hilarious. So I remember that the next day I called you and said, we got to get this guy on the podcast.
Yeah. No, I remember you saying it. And unfortunately, I haven't worked with him yet, but I'm looking forward to. We definitely bonded before you came on the stream. So without further ado, one of Boston's top up and coming comics, let's welcome to the Behind the Funny podcast, Mr. Peter Liu. Peter, welcome.
Wow, that was a hell of an intro. Thank you, guys.
You like that? How's that?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, let me make you big. How does that feel?
Well, you better live up to it now.
That's right. Yeah. No pressure, buddy.
No pressure.
So no, thank you for being on. We really appreciate it, especially because it was on short notice. But we have been talking about it on the podcast for a bunch of weeks about getting you on. So you're like one of Boston's new up and coming comics. How long have you been doing comedy for?
Not that long. It's 4 years.
4 years?
Yep.
Yeah. And where did you grow up?
That's a long question.
No. You can be as long as you want. We got an hour. So.
Yeah. I was born in China, and then when I was 8.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't see it. No. So born in China. When did you move to the U.S.?
15 I moved to the U.S., but there was a couple of in-betweens there. I was in Australia for a little bit. I was in New Zealand for a little bit, and then eventually I made it to New Jersey, spent some time in New York, and then ended up in Boston. I've been here for about like 8 years now. Seven or 8.
Did you go to school here? Is that what brought you here? Or?
Yeah, I went to high school here. So I went to high school in Jersey, and then I did college in New York, and then after that is when I came up.
All right.
I could tell by the accent you spent time in New Zealand.
No, that's the funny thing. Like, no, I don't sense any accent from any other country but New Jersey.
Nothing.
Oh, yeah, I had to keep changing it. Like, every single bounce I made, I was like, oh, fuck, we got to chameleon this again. I got to
change this shit up, right?
You would think, like, Australia, New Zealand, like here, like, most people can't even tell the difference between the accents, but they shit all over each other. So
really?
It's like, yeah, I had an Australian accent when I was in New Zealand, and they're like, say fish and chips. I'm like, you guys talk basically the same, just like a little bit different. Like, go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? Like, fuck you.
It's not that different, right?
It's not that different. So yeah, I changed it again, and then when I got here, I changed it to what the fuck it is now. So
yeah. which is a really good New Jersey, New York, Boston accent.
Yeah.
Now, what you said 4 years ago, so you were how old when you started comedy?
31 minus 4.
So 27 years old.
I can't do math. I'm drinking bourbon, buddy.
What was that thing that made you want to try it? Because we talk about that all the time. I mean,
you want to know what broke me? Is that what you want to know?
Well, exactly. Because think about it. People's number one fear is public speaking, and we go up there and add a level of stress of we're going to make them laugh as well. So, what was that? Is it something that you thought about for a while, or something you just said, someone put you up to it? I mean, what was that thing that pushed you to try it for the first time?
I think I've always enjoyed comedy. Like, I watched a lot of sitcoms growing up. I watched a lot of like early Chappelle back like when everything came out. But I never like thought about doing it like at all until I did it the first time. I think what made me do it was so I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? So that's like a thing I do. And
Ace notice from another country.
Yeah, right. I know. You are like the Renaissance New World Order man.
He's global.
You've touched every continent. He's going to be like, yeah. And then I lived in Antarctica for about 4 months, but it was too cold.
It was just a little bit. Yeah, no. So like, that was the year, like, I went through a breakup that year, and I was, like, fine with it. I was like, it's fine. I'm going to put all my energy into jiu-jitsu. I'm going to get amazing at jiu-jitsu. I'm going to come world-class at jiu-jitsu. So, like, I think 2 weeks later, I went into training, and one of my training partners, I was training for Pan Ams, which is, like, a Pan-American tournament. Yep. It's like, it goes, like, Pan-American, Worlds, whatever. Anyways, my leg, like, fractured. So my tibia fractured. So he jumped on my leg during training. It cracked. It snapped. So I couldn't move. So I had to like find something else to do. And at first I started playing, like learning how to play instruments. That's how this fucking thing happened. Cause I was like, I gotta be able to do something. Really? I can't walk. I'm just like lying here becoming useless. I had all this new free time because I was single, right? But I can't date because I can't walk. So I can't train. I can't put all this fucking energy into training. I was like, fuck, what do I do? And my job at the time was super stressful too, so that didn't help either. And I think I was just like reading a lot of books. I was really reading a lot of books, just trying different things in life. and then I was thinking about, like, I don't like where my life is right now, and I was like, what would I prefer it to be? And then I'm just like looking. I used to listen to a lot of Rogan's podcasts, not so much anymore, but I was like, this dude has the most chill life. Like, all he does is he trains, he does his podcast. That's it. He doesn't do anything else. He just fucks off most of the time. So I was like, all right, let me try it. Let me try it. See if I can follow this business model that he's done, which I don't think he thought out. I think, like, if you listen to it, he's just
purely by accident, and it just happens to admit it. It's just by accident.
Exactly. So I end up taking a one stand-up comedy class, which everyone shits on, but I actually think it's a nice way of getting to comedy, because, like, it's a very supportive environment, and as soon as you hit the open mic scene, you're like, oh shit, no, that's not what. Not at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Now, who taught your class, Peter?
Dana J. Bine. He was,
DJB.
DJB, he walked in first day wearing DJB merch. It was hilarious. I was like, oh, you're a guy that just wears his own merch. Oh, okay, cool. That's what we're dealing with.
But it's funny because he's mostly improv, isn't he?
Yeah, he's mostly improv guy. But he, I think
we're working on trying to get him on the show. He had an incident that happened last year, so he's been trying to, which I and I don't want to get into it, but he definitely got screwed, and I want him to come on, but he's waiting until, like, everything is.
I thought he already had all figured out, because I
thought so too, and I reach out to him like every 6 months, so it could be a while that I've reached out to him, but I'd love to get him on to talk about all the shit that he's been through over the past few years.
Yeah. He was actually doing. I was running a Zoom show because it was in the middle of the pandemic back then, and he was running a Zoom show when they were accusing him of doing the thing he was doing. So, like, there was some stuff that I sent to, like, try to vindicate most of the stuff that he did for the press back then. But he went through a lot of shit, but he can talk about that when he gets on.
I definitely want to get him on. But I know he's taught classes for a long time.
You know what, Peter? I've never shit on classes, because there's no handbook. There's more, like, classes in different ways. Like our buddy John Parada, he runs a class every year. When I started, there was, like, one class up in Boston, and that was it. So you either jumped in with both feet and tried to figure it out, and if you were lucky, you had someone with experience that kind of guided you and helped you a little bit. But no one helped you with, like, material and stuff like that. They just told you how to get on show, how to get
work,
that type of stuff. So you had to figure out the material side of it yourself when I started. So to me, it's kind of a good thing to kind of get you on the right path to get you started. And then if you're good enough, you'll keep going. If you're not good enough, you'll weed yourself out. So,
and that's the thing. Yeah, there's been plenty of people that we know that took classes and went on with it, like Mike Murray, John Morris. But then there's other people that have taken the class, they checked it off their bucket list, and they did it. They said they wanted to try comedy. They did it, and that was it. And you see plenty of people like that as well. So I never shit on classes, because I wish there were classes when I started, just to teach me how to write.
And obviously
write jokes better.
Right. Peter, you were a guy that took it seriously, because you work all the time. You're constantly out there doing shows. So obviously you got something out of that class that got you started correctly. So you only went to one class, you said?
One class, yeah. I don't think there's a point in taking multiple classes per se. I think the point of the class is to just get you acclimated to what it is, to give you some sense. It's like, hey, like, go to an open mic. Where do I find where the open mics are? This is where you find the open mics. Like, what do you do once you get there? You sign your name up on the list. When you do your first show, eventually, sometime down the line, don't go over time at a club. Just like
basic. It's the practical stuff, right?
Yeah.
Etiquette.
When you get on stage, take the mic out of the mic stand, set it aside. Stuff like that. Like, you don't really learn how to write per se. I would say, like, it's like, there's like rule of threes, like something we all know, but, like, it's not like every joke is gonna be a rule of three. right?
Right.
They're just like, I think the first class was like just ad lib, whatever. I think Dana had a couple of lines. You're like ad lib the last line, you know, fill this in with something. It's like playing Cards Against Humanity, but like live. I think it's like providing a welcoming enough environment that lets people get on stage, because I think that's the first like, stepping stone. You're like, get on stage with people who are a little bit nicer than these fuckwit open micers, right? Yeah. That's all it really is. And then you're like, oh, okay, I can kind of do this. Do I like this? Okay, I like this. And then you see where you want to go. Because it's like, yeah, like the open mic scene is like, you know, terrible, just horrendous.
Yeah. It always has been. So
that's how it weeds people out.
Exactly.
You know,
it weeds people out.
If you really want to do this, you're going to put up with this shit and keep going at it. And if you don't, it's going to weed you out. So you went from his class. What was that first like open mic that you did?
Oh, it looks so terrible, because I did the mic right at the end of the class, like before the class is a graduation show, which is essentially a bringer show with all your friends. That's basically what it is, and they always go well because, you know, it's everyone in the class and all their friends, so they're all supportive. But before that happened, they were like, you guys should go to an open mic and try your stuff. And I went to an open mic, and keep in mind, like whatever we had written and worked on for the past 5-6 weeks and tested in class, kill it in class or whatever, right? And then you go to open mic and you're just dead silence, maybe like one laugh. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this? And just like, you sit there, the list is like 37 fucking people. No one's paying attention. Everyone's on their phones. You're like, this is not the same thing. Like, this is not even close. You know what I mean?
No. And see, when I started, it was open mics. Regular people used to go to open mics because they wanted to see the next new rising star. Now open mics is just the other 27 comics that are on the show who are worrying about their shit. So they're looking at their notes, or they're talking and bullshitting in the back. So it's really hard to get that laugh unless, you know, if you do get a laugh on a joke, you're like, all right, I definitely need to keep that one. Because if it worked at this open mic, it'll work in front of a real audience.
Well, and it's funny you say that, Ace, because when I started, there was a mix of the two. Because if you, like, the Comedy Connection in Boston's open mic was regular audience. It was people trying to see who the next big thing was. But we would do the Station nightclub on Wednesday nights, and it was, 12 comics and the 2 drunk guys that were there every week. Right. And I remember I said at one point, I said, I'm not coming back here anymore. This is just depressing. Every week I stand up there and it feels like nobody's listening. And it was Mike Flynn, who we had on the show, Flinzo. Yeah. He said, no, keep coming and working. He goes, that 1 week when you finally are standing on this stage in front of all these guys and you make them pay attention and you get laughs from these guys, you're going to go in front of a real audience somewhere and you're going to kill. Because if you can make a bunch of comics listen to you and laugh, a regular audience is going to seem easy to you. Right, and I kept going and kept plugging away at it. And he was right. It makes you stronger because, like you said, to get them to pay attention because they're worried about their set, their notes, they're this, they're that.
And but then just to hang sometimes,
right, and then hanging out afterwards. But if they're looking down like this and you make them stop and look up because they're interested in what you're saying, you're onto something. You're right about that. So Peter, where was your first open mic, Peter? Where was it?
The terrible one I just told you about?
Yes.
Yeah, it was 7:30 at 7:30 Tavern. Is that what it's called? 7:30 at. It's in Cambridge. It's like across from the Middle East. I think it's 7:30 Tavern.
Yeah.
I think 7:30
I remember the Middle East.
Middle East is still running. Yeah.
Jeez.
They're still running. Show mics over there.
And so how long before you started feeling, because obviously they told you to go to an open mic, you're like, oh my God, this sucks. Then you have your graduation show, which probably went really well because it's a supportive crowd, right?
Exactly, yeah.
How did it go the next time you went on stage after that graduation show?
Probably terribly. I don't remember it specifically.
Block it out of your mind, right?
Yeah. Probably terrible because you're just like, oh, it's an open mic. You know what I mean? You keep doing them for a while, and it's like you start seeing the same people, and you start figuring it out. You're like, oh, okay, this is what this is.
But you know what happens? Sometimes you figure out like, ooh, this joke made that comic laugh. And then the next time you're at an open mic and you see that comic, you're like, I'm doing that joke again because my goal is to make that fucking asshole laugh again. And then all of a sudden it's like you start doing shows to make the other comics laugh, because what you don't realize, if you can make those other comics laugh on a consistent basis, regular audiences are going to laugh at that joke.
Yeah, I would agree for the most part. It's like, I think that reminds me of one of Gary Goldman's quotes where he's like, like you have these jokes where it's like one weirdo in the audience laughing. It's like, keep doing that, because eventually over the years, that's going to be your fan base. It's not going to be one weirdo. You got 1,000 weirdos.
Right.
That's
exactly. Yeah, because guys like that, guys like Bill Burr, guys like Louis C.K., they don't have to worry. People who are going to their shows are there to see their style of comedy.
Exactly.
They don't have to worry like us at, oh shit, am I going to offend anyone in this crowd? People who go to a Louis, if you go to a Louis C.K. Show, you're a fucking idiot if you get offended, because if you don't know what to expect at that show, you're an idiot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's tougher for people like us who don't have our following,
Yeah.
So now you've only been doing it 4 years, and you're a busy comic. So you must have moved up pretty quick into the, doing regular paid gigs and spots and stuff.
I guess. Well, I think what it is because I recognize, like, I come from, like, I did a lot of powerlifting, jiu-jitsu. So I come from, like, a lot of sport backgrounds where I'm like, if you want to get good at something, you just got to do it a fuck ton.
Practice.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you threatened to beat people up if they didn't.
Yeah, no, that was the backup plan, really. It's
okay.
Like, what were you saying? No, you don't want me on the show? What were
Sleep.
Choke them out. Choke them out.
So I knew there was, like, if you want to get good at something, right? It's like for jiu-jitsu it's mat time, whatever. For comedy it's stage time, and then like stage time and time you spend writing every day. So like one of my buddies who I met early in comedy, he was the first person probably in Boston comedy scene that was like nice. Gerby Laguerre, he kind of like took a break from comedy, he's back again. But anyways, he was the first guy who I saw. He was hitting like 2-3 mics a night, and I was like hitting 2-3 mics a week, and I was pretty happy with that at the time. Like, a couple months, I was like, I'm doing pretty good at this, I'm like, I feel, and I was like, you do 2-3 a day? What is this? So he's getting like 15 in a week, right?
Right.
I saw how much he was hustling, and I'm like, okay, shit, I gotta change this.
Step it up.
I gotta step it up. So I started doing that for a long time, and I think after maybe 6 months ish, that's when I started being able to get on like shows, bar shows, local shows, studio shows. And then from there, we got hit with the pandemic, I think like a year-ish into that. I don't know exactly, which was kind of shitty because I was like, I'm finally getting booked on these fucking shows.
Yeah, right.
And then I think everyone was confused for a couple months, right? Everyone did the real lockdown for 2 weeks at the very least, probably a month, and then people started doing whatever it is, and then eventually the Zoom shows kicked in, right? So I think a lot of comics avoided it for a long time. I avoided too, but then they kept popping up, and I was like, well, if we have no other way to work material, let's do this.
Right.
There are like a lot of cons to Zoom shows. Obviously, like the feedback is weird. Like you got to get people to turn on their mics and all this. You can't work on certain aspects of stage presence. But there's also a lot of pros in the sense that like it is terrible. Like you know how like open mics are terrible? Well, Zoom comedy is also terrible.
It's terrible for anyone. No one's crushing on a Zoom show.
Yeah, no one's crushing, but you could still like if you can work a Zoom, like if you can kill in a Zoom show, you know what I mean? You can bring that back to like a live audience. Right. And it's like, to me, it's like you got people, a lot of comics like to tweet, right? They want to test their stuff out by tweeting it. To me, Zoom comedy was just like tweeting plus, right? You're essentially like live tweeting your shit. That's what you're doing.
It's long form tweets.
Yeah. You can I was like, it's a harder room. So I was like, you could still like write and try stuff. That's mostly what it is. So I think, and then the other part was like, no one was getting. This is before they were doing like outdoor shows and those car shows. You remember?
The drive-in style.
The drive-in stuff. Yeah. Before all of that, there was like a year of solid, just like Zoom, and you got to see like all these like famous or like higher level working comics doing them, and you could get them to do a show, which was crazy because like they're all over the country and you otherwise wouldn't be able to do it. Like guys like Joe List, like Mark Norman, those guys, they were doing Zoom shows. Like you could be on a Zoom show with them.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like crazy. Like I did a Zoom open mic in that time and Doug Stanhope was in it. And I'm like, why are you here, Doug Stanhope?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and he like gave me some feedback at the end of the set. I was like, I appreciate it, man. I don't know what you're doing here, but this is pretty awesome.
Yeah, we did a it was a Guinness Book of World Records. They were trying to do the longest streaming show, and it was a couple of guys out of New York, New Jersey. And I mean, at one point, we were on with like Melvin George and
Ace,
Rich
during our
Voss.
time, you invited Mike Kaplan. He came on with us.
Yeah,
you know,
Mike Kaplan came on with us.
And then we're on with like Rob Bartlett and Rich Voss drops in, and it's like people that we never would normally work with, and these guys are just popping on and talking. We got roasted by Rich Voss on another Zoom show one time, and it's one of the greatest moments of my career when I got insulted by Rich Voss.
Yeah, we got shit on by Rich Voss. He's like, and I'm on with, I was just telling my wife I'm on with all these comics, and he started naming everyone. He goes, and I'm on with Ace and Scott. Hey, where are you two guys calling in from? Obscurity?
And I'm like, I was all excited. I'm like, I just got roasted by Rich Voss.
Shit on us, exactly. Yeah.
But you're right. It created different opportunities. I did a few of the Zoom shows, and the year that the Boston Comedy Festival was all Zoom and online, I participated that year. Both of us did, and those actually weren't bad. We had
300 people in a Zoom room. It's still going to
exactly.
It's pretty awesome.
You had an audience that actually
huge
listening and stuff. Yeah, it was great. But I did a few others, and one of them was just absolutely soul sucking. It was like brutal, and another one, was okay. And I just looked at it like you did. I'll try some new stuff. I'll just kind of talk. And it was Mike Kaplan, when we had him on the podcast, that really kind of said it best. He goes, what I've learned with Zoom shows is I'm not telling my jokes. I'm more telling people about my jokes.
Yeah, I'm explaining my jokes. Yeah.
And I'm like, that. You know what? I know he's being silly, but at the same time, it makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Because it's not truly a performance when you're doing those. It's more of just kind of a conversation. You're trying to, get a laugh out of it when you do it. So it's a different way of kind of telling your
presenting it. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I started running the Zoom show like eventually, and Mike came on and did one, and he had a very funny line about it. He was like, this Zoom show is like a gateway drug to real comedy.
Exactly.
I was like, it's hilarious.
I love Mike.
Listen, Mike is one of the most clever comics out there. Absolutely. He's just hilarious.
He knows the right word at the right time.
Well, that's what he studied. He studied that in college. He studied linguistics in college,
Yeah.
So
he was such a good guy. So you sounds like you worked your way up pretty quick. Unfortunately, the pandemic kind of slapped all of us in the face. But as that wound down, you got back to work pretty quick, do you think?
Yeah, so I think the pro is like once I figured out how the Zoom stuff worked, I was like, you can actually I found a lot of pros out of it. Like I started running a Zoom show. There were a lot of Zoom mics that were happening. There were a lot of Zoom shows that were happening. You could actually hit technically unlimited number of shows, like whatever you wanted to do for the day. Like you could do 4 or 5. So you could get a reps in and you could still keep writing. So that's, and then, past that, it was like warm again. And then this is when the outdoor shows came back.
Right.
So I took a trip down to New York and I saw what they were doing. They were doing all these rooftop shows. They were doing these park shows, backyard shows.
Yep.
And I was like, we have all that shit in Boston. Why is no one?
Why aren't we doing it there? Right.
Yeah. No. So Tony Capobianco, he was one of the first dudes to start an outdoor show. And then I came back. I was like, let's do this. So I started one in a park as well, because this is all we're allowed to do back then. And, just to get used to being outside, well, like, you know, in person
in front of people, right? Yeah,
with people, and it's like it was still shitty, but it was like, you know, it was getting closer to the real thing.
Yep.
So I think it's just like we're finding ways to troubleshoot our way through the pandemic, right?
Yeah, somehow to be able to entertain people. Scott and I did one for Mike Katrobis. I think that was the first one that we had done live after like 6 or 8 months.
Yeah,
and it was me, Scott, Mike Katrobis, and Jimmy Cash. And I remember Jimmy Cash going up, and I loved it. It was like the best line of the night. He looked around this tent, but there were people so spread out. He goes, "Wow, this is like a really awkward family reunion," and the crowd loved it. It was like the line of the night, but it made sense. That was how you had to do it. That was the way to get in front of people, and it was uncomfortable. And it was the first time people had been live interacting with people for 6 months, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and I think the crowds liked, I guess for lack of a better term, they liked when we acknowledged that, okay, this is not normal.
The stupidity of the situation.
We know it's not normal. We know you know it's not normal. So let's all admit it that this is kind of silly,
Right.
but we're going to have fun anyway. So, you know, let's not pretend this is normal.
Right.
Because all of us ended up saying something about it that night and made some kind of joke on it. And all those jokes killed that night because everyone knew that this is just weird, you know, and it made everyone feel comfortable because we acknowledged it like that, which you have to do. That's part of comedy, is to acknowledge the elephant in the room, the weird things that we see. What's different about this performance when we're in doing a fundraiser or in a different place than we normally do comedy? You have to acknowledge it because they see it. If we ignore it, you know,
if you ignore it, then it makes it more uncomfortable for the people that are sitting there. You have to acknowledge it, right?
Exactly. So I think that's what made that work when Jimmy said it, and it just made it put everyone at ease, and the rest of the show just flowed great then.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
I was going to say that I do think that doing all those like outdoor weird shows, like everything that's like not comedy the way it's intended, and then when you come back and you do comedy in like a packed basement full of
made
people,
you
like,
appreciate it, right?
made you appreciate, but also you're like, I'm playing this game on easy mode now. This is oh my God, you know?
But what you would have thought was difficult a year and a half before, like a year and a half in before the lockdown. Now you look at it as, oh my God, this is so easy. A live audience in front of me. I can handle this.
Yeah.
You know?
I just entered a cheat code. This is
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
So let me ask you this: since you've been back, have you had any like wow moments where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm working with this person, or I can't believe I'm on this stage that I've always wanted to be on? And I know it's tough because, you know, in 4 years, with 2 years being a pandemic, it might be difficult to nail down. But is there anyone that you've worked with that you're like, wow, this is awesome, I'm working with this person?
I did a weekend hosting at the Connection for Shane Torres when he was in town.
Uh-huh.
That was pretty cool because it was like 5 shows. So it was like 2 shows per night plus the one on Sunday.
Yeah.
It was cool to just be in that rhythm of like seeing, you know, because it was the natural show, right? Like host, feature, headliner, and then host, headliner again. It was cool seeing, you know, the adjustments people made in between shows, but also just like, oh, you're actually doing it now. You mean like you're doing it for real. You're not just doing like some bullshit showcase show or some like bar crap. Like you're at a comedy club doing back-to-back shows on a weekend, and that was. And you're working that same material, even if you're only doing 10 or 15 minutes. You're working that same 10 or 15 minutes all weekend to see how it goes with different audiences, right? Yep.
Yeah.
So that felt pretty cool because it's just like the back-to-back nature of it. It's like, I think Bad and I got to do Laugh Factory like a couple months ago. That was pretty cool too.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was there was a expo in Chicago, so it was like Second City, and it was cool to see. Like I've never been in Second City before, and like they have the photos of all those improv guys, that, like
alumni,
Key and Peele, Steel Carell, like all those people. Like you're like, oh, this is where they started. This is nuts. Like they have a like obviously their improv is really good in Chicago, but they're also their comedy scene, like their regular stand-up scene is also really cool too. They have a couple hangout spots that they go to, so that was pretty cool as well.
But see, that's what's cool. People don't realize, like, Boston is looked at. I mean, that's one of the top comedy scenes in the country too, and it always has been. I mean, when you think about the people that made it out of Boston. And the people that are still in Boston, like there were just some people that just never moved out. Like, you know, I mean, all right, Don Gavin moved down to Florida recently, but like Don Gavin, Steve Sweeney, Ken Rogerson, like they're killers. Lenny Clark, killers in comedy. And then you look at the people that made it out, like Kevin Meaney, Paula Poundstone, Jay Leno, Stephen Wright, you know,
Dennis Leary.
You know, I mean, they were just absolute killers. And you've even heard, if you listen to Rogan's podcast, he'll say it. He'll put a Boston comic up against anyone. He calls them assassins. You know, because we were playing in Boston to very blue collar people. People in Boston audiences make up their mind whether or not they like you after 3 jokes. Within the first 5 minutes, they decide whether they like you.
Well, you got to be funny. If you're not funny, people are ruthless. That's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they don't like you, they have no problem telling you, and they will tell you over and over until you get off that stage.
Right. But the thing is, you find other places are a little more forgiving. Like if you go down south, they're a little more forgiving. In certain, like even in Portland, Maine. Portland, Maine was more forgiving.
There's such nice crowds.
There's such awesome crowds, right? Yeah, New Hampshire, same thing. You know,
I would say I think because I traveled to like the LA scene, the New York scene, Chicago scene, right? Like I think Boston actually like second to New York. Chicago has a great scene too. I was like, because in LA, I'm like, I was out there. I'm like, oh, what show? I'm trying to do some shows Mondays, Tuesday. Can you guys like let me know what you got going on? They're like, what are you talking about? Monday, Tuesday. We don't have shows Monday, Tuesdays. What the fuck you mean you don't have shows Monday, Tuesdays?
Right. Yeah.
They have shows every single day.
Well, like the LA comedy scene, right? How do you not have shows on Monday and Tuesday, right?
In Boston, we have shows too. There's not that many, but we have them.
You have them, right?
You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, you guys just like you don't work that hard at this. You know what I mean? Like you got
right.
You got a bunch of celebrities here, so I think. Like the Boston scene is definitely like up there, probably just under like New York and
for hard working, yes, absolutely.
And also like how funny people are because you go see and like in New York you have like great comics, very good comics, but you also have just a shit ton of terrible comics as well, right? So they have more of everything,
right. Which is interesting though because when you go to New York, because like I did the comic strip live years ago. And I basically got told 2 things. I got told that they had plenty of white middle-aged men, and then they told me, they said, "Here's the thing: you were really funny and you were entertaining, and the crowd loved you. But if we need someone to fill in on a Thursday night, are we going to call the guy from Rhode Island who's 3.5 hours away, or are we going to call the 15,000 comics who are within a 3-block radius?" Yeah. I get it. I totally get it. You know, I got a job in medical sales, so I kind of got settled into a career, and I do comedy on the side. Doesn't mean I love it any less or don't want to work as hard, but I had to support a family, so I had to kind of gravitate towards that. But it is funny how the different scenes will judge you based on where you're from. You know, you could be funny, but if you don't live there, forget it. You're not going to get work, so.
Or even you've run into it before where with, your references in your act and stuff like that,
well, if
people will judge you on that type of stuff.
Well, that's the problem is if someone sees me doing a local show where I'm making local references, they think I can't get past that. And it's like, because I got told once, oh, well, you're a Rhode Island comic. You do Rhode Island references. I'm like, yeah. And when the guys from Boston come to Rhode Island, no one knows the fucking references they're saying. No one knows, and don't get me wrong. I love Mike McDonald, but Mike McDonald would make a reference to Pete's Pub. No one in Rhode Island knows where Pete's Pub is in Boston. We don't even go out of the fucking state. let alone know where Pete's Pub is, you know. But that's when you run into some issues too, where if you do some local humor and that's what they see, they don't realize that you can make that more generalizable, if that's a word. I don't know if that's a word, but
Now, Pete, have you had any feedback from anybody like that? You know, like we're talking about, where you go into a place and they're like, I don't know if your comedy fits here. I don't know if that's the thing. Have you had any, kind of
like I've had people tell me it's like, oh, this is the crowd that we have coming through, so just like you have to like understand this is our or like, oh, this is an older crowd, or like this is in the burbs or whatever.
Right.
Don't do your New Zealand comedy.
Don't do my 2 lines from New Zealand.
We have a tourist bus from New Zealand. Stay away from that stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But I think as a if you get to do that show, you learn yourself very quickly what does and does not work.
Oh,
you know
absolutely.
I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're like, obviously regional references, or like, I think that's one of the cool things about comedy is that like you can do all these different rooms. Like a Cambridge crowd is going to be very different from like a Southie crowd or a Brockton crowd or
absolutely
Portsmouth, like Portland, Maine. Like those are all like, you're not traveling that far. They're all within like, let's say an hour-ish, and you're meeting completely different demographics of people, like socioeconomically, age groups, ethnic, political, whatever it is. Like they're all so different, and then you gotta like figure out. All right, like
you learn how to adjust to each crowd.
Exactly.
Don't do the same material, but adjust to each crowd. Right.
Yeah, and like ideally, you have like a giant bank of material that you can do. If not, you can try to like crowd work your way through. But that's one of the parts that I think is really cool, where you're like, oh, like this is the crowd that I'm dealing with, and like if you don't make that like connection fast enough in the beginning, you're just gonna bomb for a very long time.
Right.
And that's one of the things that impressed me about you. For a guy that's been doing this for 4 years, you talk like the things you just said and the way you carry yourself like a guy that's been doing it a lot longer.
Yeah, you're very insightful.
Yes, you're very insightful.
Someone who's newer.
Then,
I've bombed a lot. That's what it is.
You don't learn from bombing, exactly.
But I've seen you on stage a couple of times, and when you walk up there on stage, you have the, for lack of a better term, the swagger, and we all, even when we're nervous as hell, you got to carry on stage that confidence,
Right.
But when you get on stage, I saw you at McHugh's, I saw you at the Galactic there. You have that confidence when you're on stage that you deliver your jokes with the confidence and you get those laughs and everything like that. And if someone had to guess, they'd probably say, oh, he's been doing comedy at least 10 years, 12 years or so because of the way that you carry yourself.
Right.
Do you really feel that comfortable when you're up there, or is that something that you're faking it until you make it type of thing?
Definitely fake it till you make it, man. No, I think it took me a while to get comfortable, and I still don't think I'm as comfortable as like a lot of comics who've been doing it longer. But I want to be, because I see the people who are like multiple decades in, where you're just like, this is just like it's like being at home for them. You know what I mean? It's like effortless level of comfort. And I think I try to do a couple things I know what I wasn't good at. So like when I was starting, I first like write jokes, obviously, right? It's like get good at writing jokes, and then you're like, oh, like maybe let me try some act outs. Let me try moving a little bit. It's because like I think people talk about Chris Rock. He likes to create motion, and then he'll sit when he starts delivering the punchlines. But with setups, he'll move to engage the audience. So you start playing with these different things, and then it's like, oh, like if your material's not hitting, crowd work, like learn how to crowd work. How do you do it? And Jim's great at crowd work. So he gave me a good number of pointers. He was like, oh, like this is how you do it. And there's a couple guys. So it's like I tried to like, I was like, oh, these are all the things, like these are different aspects of comedy, of stage presence, whatever, crowd work, whatever, riffing that you got good at. And it's like, all right, let me like work on these until it's at a point where you can be comfortable on stage, right? And I think like you feel it too. Like if you're like not getting laughs, you start shrinking a little bit, right? You feel it.
So you need to what you need to do is understand like, okay, this audience isn't into this type of material, so I will adjust and start doing this other type of material. And maybe I'm not great at it, but it's what's going to make them laugh. And that's one of the things, like, so when I started, a lot of comics, we used to get hired to do bachelor parties, believe it or not, especially in Rhode Island, right? I mean, Scott said it before. We used to get hired to do bachelor parties, and bachelor parties was a great way to learn crowd work because that's
all they wanted
and start doing. Yeah, you could go up there and start doing your material, and they would not be going for it. But then you start shitting on this table and then going to this table and shitting on them. And now that table's laughing because you're shitting on them. And so you learn crowd work. And being as uncomfortable as it is, and this is the advice I give newer comics, as uncomfortable as it is to be put into situations where it's clearly not the situation for comedy, it's still good to go into those situations because it teaches you how to be nimble and how to adjust. Because, like I said, and we've talked about it before, we did a whole show on shitty situations that comics get put in where you know it's going to be a bad gig when. And so, like, backyard parties, pool parties, comedy shows where the audience doesn't know it's a comedy show. It's a surprise.
A sports bar where they're leaving the
You're forcing comedy on people. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Forcing comedy. Sport, like Scott said, sports bars where they don't want to turn off the TV because the playoffs, you know? And it's like all these situations that are horrible, but it helps you grow as a comic because you realize how to pivot and say, okay, my normal material isn't working. I got to figure out how to make this audience laugh. And sometimes it's shitting on them. And sometimes it's making fun of the place. Sometimes it's acknowledging how crazy the situation is that I'm supposed to be doing comedy while the fucking Bruins are in Game 7 of the playoffs. You know, it's every one of those situations that help you grow.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure. Especially with like you said, the private gigs. I think I doing a lot of like weddings or birthdays, stuff like that. They just want to care about themselves. They just they don't care about you and your take on XYZ or your life or create. No, I don't give a shit. It's all about them. It's their special day.
Yep. That's exactly it.
You can pull it off at a birthday party. You can pull it off at, like Ace said, a bachelor party. You know, when you could turn it into a roast, if you know, type of thing. Weddings, to me, I've done a couple of those.
Horrible.
Comedy weddings, there's no way to make that work. It's not the place for it whatsoever. But one thing I noticed about you, the way you described, like you talked a minute ago about, you know, Jim McHugh giving you pointers about crowd work and, you know, other people and the way you study. You seem to be a really good student of comedy. You don't just, you're a good writer because I've heard your material. You're a very good writer, but you also take pointers that people have given you. You take your experience you've had on stage and you take all these things and you put them together. You seem to be a very good student and put things together because that's one of the things that seems to have helped you in a short amount of time, you know, kind of
as much as you have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Get to the place where you're at, where other people, I've seen people that have been doing it 7 or 8 years and not have the kind of growth that you seem to have.
Yeah.
You seem to be more open to the feedback, like Ace just said, than other people are, which is important.
But that's probably because of the discipline you learned in martial arts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I recognize I'm not like I'm learning. Like it's even like black belts are still learning. They learn less, but they're still learning. So it's like I think it's naive to like not a lot of comments like, oh, how dare this person give me feedback, blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, like if you don't like the feedback, just don't take it. You know, it's fine. Whatever.
Yeah, but you know what? Listen, I've been doing it 33 years. Yeah. If someone turned around who was doing it 2 years in and said, oh my God, you know, have you ever thought about changing this joke to this? I'll try it. I don't give a shit because you know what? You took the time to watch my act and listen to it and have a thought about maybe changing something around that might make it better. Who the hell am I?
That's a compliment.
That's a compliment. Exactly. Because no matter how long you've been doing it, you don't have all the answers. we get very narrow-minded when we're doing comedy, and there have been plenty of times where I'm writing a joke or I have a premise of a joke and I'm looking at it straight ahead, and then someone says, hey, have you ever thought about it coming from this way? And I'm like, oh my God, that makes it so much funnier. I don't give a shit how long you've been doing it. You could have been first time on stage. If you have some idea that you think is funny for one of my jokes, I'm going to take that advice. You're crazy not to, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think the only part where people get annoyed maybe when it's like a lot of unsolicited, but even then it's like, I think you're, like you said, you're still learning. Like you're trying to like.
Exactly. You're always learning.
You're always learning. That's basically what it comes down to. And it's like,
yeah.
No, and like you said, black belts don't stop learning. You know, guys that have been headlining for 30 years. Tony V, I did a show with him last November. Now, Tony V's been doing comedy for 72 years now. The guy's been on tons of TV shows, movies, everything like that. And he did a joke, and afterwards I said to him, I go, that joke was hilarious. I thought you were going to go down this angle.
Yeah.
And he goes, I never thought of that before. And I'm like, that's in my mind, that's where you're going. And he goes, right. That would make a funny tag after the punchline.
Right.
He goes, I'm going to try that next time. Thanks. And I'm like, holy shit, Tony V just thought that was funny. I mean,
that's the thing.
That's one of my heroes.
You know,
never, Tony V.
If you're truly open to it, you never stop learning, which means you never stop growing.
Yep.
You know?
Sure.
So.
You know, and that's what, like I said, the reason I say that is because when I saw you at the Galactic Theater there that Kristen Logan did, which is a fun little room, you were closing the show that night. And I forgot, how much time did you do that? Like 20 minutes?
Yeah, like 20,
something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Now, this is a room, Ace, where it's a showcase show.
Yeah.
A bunch of comics are going up doing like 10 minutes or so. I was lucky enough. I had done a Funny for Fun show earlier.
And you went there after?
I went there afterwards. I told her I was just going to stop by just to check the place out. And she goes, well, I'll put you up, do like 7 minutes or so. So I got up and did a quick 6 or 7 in the middle. And he closed it out and did 20 minutes at the end. And, you know, it's a younger audience, you know, but they're a good audience. And he held them for that whole 20 minutes, closed the show out strong. And it was a fun show that night. I mean, Tyler Hittner almost ruined it, and I hope he's listening right now.
He almost ruins every show. We know.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But you know, I'm thinking back to when I was 4 years in. I don't think I was closing any shows at that point.
I know I wasn't. No,
I probably was doing 20 minutes, but if I was lucky, I was featuring at that point. So that's
4 years in.
Yeah. I might have been lucky enough to feature.
4 years in, I was still opening for guys like Joe Rogan, Al Ducharme, and Tom Cotter.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the kind of talent that was around here, you know?
See, when you say it that way, opening, it doesn't sound that bad. It sounds amazing, actually. But I know what you meant by it. You're like,
those guys
at that time. Yeah.
Those guys weren't what they are now.
You're like, yeah. For sure.
No, I know.
So what? Yeah, I was gonna go ahead, Ace.
No, I was just going to ask you. So we always wrap up the show with asking our guest about.
That's what I was going to ask.
The funny. Well, we're on the same wavelength, my friend.
Yeah.
We always ask our guest about the funny bad gig story, and that's the gig that wasn't funny the night it happened. It actually made you want to quit comedy. But the further away you get from it, you're in the green room with other comics, and everyone's exchanging like war stories about the shitty gigs that they've done, and. Of course, because we're comics and we all support each other, we love hearing the gigs that, you know, our friends have died on because we love, you know, reveling in the pain of our friends. So this is the story where you're like, oh, you think that was bad? Oh, let me tell you about this gig I had.
Peter, it's your one-up story.
Yeah, it's the one-up story.
When someone tells you their worst gig story, this is your one-up story.
I got like 2 stories.
Please.
One is for how bad the gig is, and the other one was still bad, but is bad for me, like very specifically. So I'll start with the first one is it was a private gig. So I realized like if you do private gigs, you get more stage time. You do more stage time, you get better faster. So I was like, so I started trying to do more of these things, and I booked this gig. It was for 60-year-old retired Navy SEAL captain. And it was like a party for his birthday, all his friends, family at some country club, whatever it was. And it was like an hour and a half they booked it. So I brought a couple friends with me. They were all going to do like 10, 15, 20, whatever. And I was going to close out the show and do 30. At the time, I probably was not ready. It was like one of the first times that I was like trying to do that amount of time, right?
Yeah.
And I did not know how to crowd work at all at this point. Just so everyone else goes up, right? The first guy goes up, does okay. Second guy goes up, he like kills because he has all this like Coast Guard material that's just like going crazy with all the crowd.
Everyone's loving, yeah.
They're loving it. It's very specific to them. He has all this golf material, which, you know, the retired Navy SEAL captain, big golfer. So that hits, you know, all the topics. And then I had one of my friends, Carl, go up. Carl was really good at crowd work. So he just like obliterated the room. And then I go up, right? And then I started out regular. I was doing okay. And then I had this like new segment that I was doing, like hate crimes, which I thought was like great, like very creative, like genius. Now, that did not vibe with the crowd at all in any sense. So I immediately dug myself into a very deep hole. And that was like 10 minutes in. So I still had like 20 minutes to
get out of it.
Now, in my mind, I'm like, these people paid for an hour and a half, so I can't just leave, right?
Right.
Nope.
And I also don't know how to crowd work.
Meanwhile, they're going, when is this guy done?
Exactly. Like, they're polite enough that they'll continue paying attention, even though I'm just like eating shit. And I don't know how to recover at this point. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I can only recover with more material. But like at this point, you know how when you've lost them, it's like almost, that's what it was. So I ate shit for like 20 minutes straight, which was the first time I ate shit for that amount of time. Because usually when you eat shit for an extended period of time, you take yourself out of that situation.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or like you're doing 10-minute spot, even you ate shit for the whole time, it's only 10 minutes.
Right.
Whatever. You're like, you just leave, you get off stage. But I was like, oh, I have to just be here until this ticker goes off.
This thing, right.
And I remember like the show ended, right? Like, wow. And people, you could tell because like they would go up to, you know how like when shows end, people go up to like, oh, hey, great job, you know, you were hilarious, you were funny, and then they saw you and they're like, you know, like good try. Like there was no words, it was just a facial expression, and I was like, okay, I get it. Just look, don't acknowledge me as a person. Just keep moving along. Let's forget this happened. So that was the first time where I just like ate all shit for a very long time and didn't know how to get out of it. So that was
good lesson right there.
Yeah. And then
how to eat that shit sandwich and enjoy it while it's happening. Yeah. You have no choice.
And Carl, who killed that night, he was like, now that I watch you bomb for that amount of time, now we're real friends. I'm like, thanks. I'm glad you guys fucking enjoyed the catastrophe. That was me up there eating shit for 20 minutes. But no, it's good because you learn right from that experience. You're like, all right, where did it go wrong? Like, how would you bring them back? Like, if it's material or it's like you crowd work, that's what it kind of spurs you to like learn all these other different things. So that was the first one, the longest amount of shit. Probably still the worst set I've ever had ever. And then the second one, gig wise, that was terrible. This was late. Ish into like we were like kind of coming back from the pandemic, I would say, and it was an outdoor show. It was an outdoor show at a college at night in the winter. So it was supposed to be indoors. It was not. We get there, it's outdoors, right? It's like a 9:00 show. There's a skate rink on the side where people are ice skating, and then there's like one food truck that exists, and then there's just a bunch of chairs like out in the open, right? A bunch of chairs out in the open. And you know those like little fire heaters they had? You know, like
yep.
They had like two of those. They had two of those, which don't work because it was like 20 degrees outside, and it was just like the worst. The mic also didn't work. The mic didn't work for most of the show. It was the worst setup thing ever. I didn't expect people to even show up, but the people showed up for like hot chocolate, and some of them sat down. And Will Noonan was supposed to close that show, which he did. He did 3 minutes and just left. He just bounced. Granted, he actually did very well in his 3 minutes. I opened the show, and like I opened the show when there was like 5 people, not like 15 people. Jonathan Tilson was on the show too, and he was like, "I could tell by the way you guys are sitting, you just want to go home. You're all like this." So it's like the worst environment for comedy. Like at night, outdoors, in the cold. These were like freshmen as well. You know what I mean? Like freshman college students starting college for the first time in a pandemic. Everything was just atrocious. You can't laugh when your body is not.
It's hypothermic.
Exactly. It doesn't work. So.
Ace, we might have to add one. We did, like Ace mentioned earlier, we did an episode called "You Know It's a Bad Gig When," and we had Mike McCarthy and John Prada on, and we tried to come up with a list of the top 10 things as a comedian when you walk into a gig. If you see or know any of these things are happening, you know it's going to be a bad gig,
right.
and you got to deal with it. Well, we couldn't narrow it down to 10, so it was a top 12 list. Well, I think we need to add if the temperature is below 40 degrees.
And the audience is in that temperature. Yeah. That's a good one. Hypothermia doesn't do so well with comedy.
Yeah.
Oh
Audience members suffering from hypothermia brings the level of comedy down.
Definitely. Oh, my God.
Dude,
so Peter,
that's a good one.
What can we promote for you? I know you've got your thing, Peterloo Comedy. Is that on Twitter?
That's Peterloo Comedy. I made it easy. That is literally everything. Instagram, Facebook page, Twitter, TikTok, OnlyFans. It's all Peterloo Comedy. So
OnlyFans.
I'll be checking that out later on tonight.
I'm subscribing as soon as we get off of here.
That's right, baby. I'm in a hotel room. I'm alone. I'm checking out the Peterloo OnlyFans.
I hope you're into feet.
I am. Oh man, you just got me excited now.
Are they bound?
They bound?
Only the toes. Only the toes. The toes bound to each other.
Only the toes, because it's a Chinese thing. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. He was right on it. He was right on it. So what, you got any big gigs coming up?
Actually, May I'm doing a little traveling, so not too many coming up in May. I'm going to Mexico tomorrow morning, actually.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm going to be there for a week. I come back, and I think I'm doing like a couple shows up in Maine. Probably, I think Lincoln Lodge, the Crap Brewery Underground that they run over there.
Yeah.
Guys. And then June again, it gets busy. I have June pretty packed out, but I have no idea I post everything on like Facebook and Instagram. So if they want to.
So check out at Peterloo Comedy on Facebook, Instagram. Check out his schedule. Are you going down to Mexico for comedy or for something else?
As a buddy of mine, he's getting married, and he wants me to do a little
run some drugs for you.
I was going to say, he's going to be a mule.
He's my narco friend, actually. Yeah,
he's going to come back with a pound of coke up his ass.
His name is Pablo Escobar.
Junior.
Yeah, Junior. No, that's awesome, man. Well, listen, we really, really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Awesome, man.
Like
awesome,
I said,
Peter.
We'd love to have you on again. We do occasionally we'll do panel shows where we'll come up with like a topic and have experienced, younger, newer comics as well as older comics, like a good mix. So we'd love to get you on one of those if you'd be interested.
Yeah, for sure.
Have you back, just to get your perspective on stuff as a newer comic.
Yeah, definitely. So. And I think he would be really good once we start doing some live shows in front of the audience.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd love to see you because I work for Funny for Funds as well, and I've got some shows coming up. I'd love to have you on.
I highly recommend them to any comedy bookers out there. I've seen Peter a couple times, and he will deliver very funny comedy.
That's great. Awesome, man.
Oh yeah, listen, thank you guys.
Peter, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and safe travels tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, man. Have a good one. And that was Peterloo. Oh, hold on. You're way bigger than me. There we go. Now we're better. No, that was awesome having him on. It's someone we've talked about having on for a while, and I was glad that we were able to finally get him on. So that's awesome.
No, definitely. And like you said, up and coming comedian that deserves to be mentioned because he works, man. You follow him on social media. The guy is literally out there 6 nights a week doing comedy in different places, working on material, and he's a funny comic too.
But you know what? That comes from the martial arts training background,
yes.
because it's very disciplined, and not, a lot of comics come at it as well. I think I'm going to try comedy, and they kind of flounder around for a while. But if you really take it seriously, like he does in a martial arts type of way, in a discipline type of way, then you are going to excel faster than other people in your in your class, so to speak.
No, and that was a good point when you brought that up. That definitely matches his work ethic and why he's out there all the time and why he's risen as fast as he has.
Absolutely.
And his material is very witty. You could tell he's a very smart guy, the way that he writes and his delivery. I really enjoyed watching him perform, and I'm glad we had a chance to have him on tonight. So I hope you guys enjoyed that as well. If you have a chance to see Peter, go check out his website, check out at Peter Liu Comedy, LIU, and see where he's playing. Go check him out. Tell him you saw him or heard him on Behind the Funny, and you won't be disappointed. Very funny comic. Thank you for tuning in, as you guys always do. Again, if you want to watch us every Wednesday night, which actually that might be changing, so you got to tune in to you got to follow us on Behind the Funny at Facebook, because we're going to be changing nights here pretty soon.
Yeah, we're going to be changing nights pretty soon. We're probably going to be going to Thursday nights on Facebook. We'll still maintain, because our time slot on Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling on twitchtv.com is Wednesday nights. We're probably still going to pre-record the show and send it over to Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling on Wednesday nights. But if you want to catch us live and comment and stuff like that, it'll probably be Thursday nights. We'll let you know when that happens. Next week, we're working on getting our buddy Jimmy Cash on. He's had a couple of issues that have come up. We mentioned him on the show earlier tonight, but he is a hilarious comic, and I'm really looking forward to getting him on.
Yeah.
If you're on TikTok, look up Janitor with Stamina. Very, very funny, hilarious stuff, that content that he puts out up there, and we're looking forward to having him on. So we'll have him on hopefully next week. And then we've got, I'm booking the summer. I mean, we're going to have some comedy festival folks that are going to be coming on this summer. We've got some big acts, some up and comers. It's a good mix that's going to be coming up.
Definitely. And then in August, if you're in Southern New England, we're going to be doing 2 live shows.
Yes.
At the Comedy Park in Branson, Rhode Island, Friday and Saturday night, 8:00. That in early August. You'll see some live comedy performance, and then we're going to talk to the comedians that we have on after we do the live comedy. And if you're live in the audience, you guys can help us out with some of the questions and stuff like that. And maybe, I'm just saying, maybe we'll have a few T-shirts that we'll give away those nights too.
That'll be great. Yeah,
I'm saying maybe. I don't know.
It's gonna be a great night. We're gonna have a different guest each night, Friday and Saturday. One show Friday, one show Saturday. What we'll do is we'll each do 15 minutes of stand-up, and then we will come on live and start doing the podcast and just interview our guests, about their career, much like a normal show. So you definitely want to check those out. If you are in the Rhode Island area and you want to come live, come out and see it and be able to, like Scott said, participate and ask questions.
Love
and if
to see you guys there.
We are going to be doing it live on StreamYard. So even if you can't make it to Rhode Island, join those shows and ask us some questions.
Definitely. And then, of course, support the podcast. Tell a friend about us. Share us with people love comedy, and help us grow the podcast. And leave a 5-star written review wherever you download your podcast. It's a huge thing to help the podcast out. Takes you just a couple of minutes, but it'll be a big help to us.
And listen, you've heard us talk about the new merchandise. We've got Behind the Funny 100%, as well as the to your point. We
got
have
the live from the Aceman,
Aceman.
and we have the original, the OG Behind the Funny.
And so those are on mugs, coffee mugs, as well as T-shirts. And if you join our Patreon page, which is up, it's $5 a month. You'll get bonus content as well as either a mug or a T-shirt, whichever you want. So check us out on patreon.com/Behind the Funny. And other than that, we will talk to you
next week.